Hi, and welcome to Two CPAs and the Mic, the podcast where we talk tax, finance, and all things related to business. Whether you're a business owner, working professional, or someone who wants to start a career in accounting, this is the podcast for you. Hosted by CCK Strategies partners Jeff Frable and Sara Mays, we dive into relevant business and tax matters with working professionals to make these topics less intimidating, relatable, and dare we say fun? Let's get down to business.
Welcome back to another episode of Two CPAs and the Mic. We're so glad you joined us today. We are covering relevant business and tax topics. We're applying straight talk and practical information without all the jargon and stuffiness that's normally associated with our profession. I am Jeff Frable, a partner with CCK Strategies. My co-host, Sara Mays. What's up, Sara?
What up, Frable? How's it going today?
Man, it's going well. It's a beautiful day in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We're getting close to triple digits, and we had a heat wave recently, and that's no fun.
It's not fun, but I mean, are you a summer or a winter?
I was going to ask you the same question. The only thing I like about summer is I can lay by my pool. So I hate everything about the weather and the temps. Oh, yes. The humidity. But you know what comes after summer? It's fall. It's fall.
It's fall and the best time of year.
Well, Sara, I'm so glad you're with me today again. And Christy, hi, Christy.
Hello, team.
We're so glad you're joining us too, Christy. You are our on-air guide and keep us on the straight and narrow. We love having you a part of our show, and we got a great show today. What do you think, Sara?
I'm excited about today's show, and I'm excited about my favorite part at the end, which our guest doesn't know about yet.
Yeah, it's your little surprise.
I'm excited for these today.
We are taking another, what I would call a non-traditional CPA journey. It seems like we have a lot of those in our firm, right, Christy?
Oh, I completely agree, but I gotta tell you, I'm so excited about this one. I can't stand it.
I can't stand it. Well, we better jump in real quick then, because we don't want to keep everybody waiting.
It's gonna come through the ears.
It is my privilege and honor to introduce our many listeners to one of our partners, Sara, Caleb Caldwell. Caleb is a friend. He is a partner, and I feel like he's one of my brothers. I just love this guy. He has a very special role in our firm. People look up to him. I mean, they look up to all of us as leadership, but he just comes across in a different way, and I think you're going to hear that on this episode. He cares significantly about our teammates and about this firm. And you know what's really cool about him is the other reason why someone should continue to listen to this episode is because he has a very special niche. Is that like the
niche,
the Holy Grail? Niche.
Oh, are we going to start going Monty Python?
I
don't even know if Caleb even knows what Monty Python is.
Yeah,
I know about the coconuts.
I'm banging the coconuts. Caleb is I'd say he's one of our younger partners.
He's our
is
youngest.
He the youngest?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He sure is.
I'm just going to jump. We need to jump to it because we're doing all this introduction to Caleb, but we need to let him talk. Yes. Caleb Caldwell, one of our partners. Welcome to the podcast, Caleb.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me and feeling like what I had to say was worth listening to. So hopefully your listeners agree. And Jeff, even though you called me your brother, your hatred for summer, I don't know if we're going to be able to relate on that one. I'm going to be in shorts and flip-flops every day of the week if I can.
Every day. I get it. But Caleb, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to CCK, and really why should people listen to what you have to say? I mean, we know why, but tell our listeners why they should listen to what you have to say.
Sure. I'll kind of start with that and work my way backwards. I mean, the primary topic of what we're sharing today is really my passion for, I'll call it sports and athletics, and how, as the nerd on the call here, how could I bring that to my passion for, taking care of clients? And so the cool part about this is I've started to work with some really high profile athletes. I've even started to work with some pretty well-known rappers and country music artists and things like that. So if you're interested in learning how to blend maybe your passion with your expertise, this might be a good call for you to listen to. So
I think that's a great point, Caleb, because as you've I'm going to use the term grown up in this firm because
Mhm.
you've
Yeah.
been here. I've been here the whole time and watched you come from a staff person to a partner. You always had this funness about you in the firm. You were always leading like our different pools for the NCAA tournament or anything else. And you're exactly right. You've taken what you refer to as your passion and you're blending it in your professional world and doing something with that. And in other words, you could say that you're really loving the work that you're doing. So I look forward to kind of getting into that. But as we start, just kind of tell us, where'd you go to school? What made you decide to follow your dreams and passions in the accounting world and become a CPA?
No, I appreciate that. I mean, it's funny in my head. It was like, we can't even talk about all of this if we don't talk about how I got here. Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so, it's funny. I was this 21-year-old kid when I started at CCK, and I remember fresh. I didn't know a lot about CCK at the time. I'd done a little bit of homework. I had a class with an intern that knew the firm, but I didn't know much about it at the time. And I'll kind of come back to who we are and why it's so important to me here in a little bit. But absolutely, it was the right decision for me. It's funny. I love telling newbies, I was still in college. I was still getting my degree. I remember telling newbies all the time, I used to hate the question, tax or audit, what are you going to do? Because in college, I didn't have a clue. I remember I had my interview here at the firm and that question came up. And I remember the partner at the time, she said, do you want to do tax or audit? I mean, you applied for everything, so every opening I pretty much applied for. I was like looking for an opportunity. I'm not shy about sticking my name out there. And so kind of the cool part about it, she said, okay, you want to do tax then. and it was, if there's one thing you guys know about me, it's that I don't do well with people telling me what to do. I'm okay collaborating. I don't like to be told what to do. Yep. This by far is the best decision that's ever been made for me, right? Starting my career in tax is really, I grew a love for the opportunity inside tax. So, and it's cool again, I think without that day, I remember that day so vividly. Without that day, there's no way I would be doing the type of work I am with the professional athletes and following my passion had I not experienced that.
I'm sorry, Caleb. We've had all these other guests on before, and they've always said that Sara trained them. So did Sara train you when you came in?
100.
Yeah. Sara and I, we had kind of a wild relationship. She wasn't my supervisor right off the bat, but she was my first real project manager on anything that I started on in the firm. Yep. And I remember, I know I was like this deer in a headlight. I was in Sara's office all the time, just asking.
Or I was in yours.
or she was sitting with me, honestly, she was sitting with me carrying the day quite a bit. But so I would say absolutely Sara trained me probably just in an unofficial way. You absolutely were there. So I remember working on this large mall that was going through a transaction with you and the amount of hours we spent working on that together. And so absolutely, Sara, definitely.
And the dentist. Do you remember that? Yeah.
I love dentists. I'm just playing.
We love our dentists.
So Caleb, you came in and you weren't sure exactly what you do. And what you wanted to do, I can completely understand that and I'm sure a lot of our listeners can too, because when they come out of school, there's just so much to do in this profession. Sometimes you just need a little bit of guidance to get into a certain area, but you got into tax, you got your certification. So tell us a little bit, what is it that you like about tax and what is it that you like and value about being a CPA?
Yeah. I think it's a great question. The easy answer about being a CPA, I mean, growing up, the accounting industry was always described as this really stable job. And to me, I grew up in a little bit of a chaotic upbringing, and so stability was something that was really interesting to me. I had a knack for numbers. I didn't realize how much of an entrepreneur I was until I really got into this. But when I added my little love for math that all the accountants love to say, my capabilities in math, plus having a business mind, it clicked. I remember I took the accounting one, whatever it was called back in the day, and I instantly knew this is what I should be doing. It just made so much logical sense to me. And then to your point, I get out in the real world and I start experiencing this concept called tax and what that means. And God, I'm not sure anybody in the world really knows what tax means. It's just so convoluted these days, whether you're in the US or anywhere internationally. And so,
It's scary. I mean, there's a scary connotation to it too.
Yeah, it's the amount of times I hear from a client that I'm afraid of the IRS, and they could be the squeakiest, cleanest client you ever heard in your life. You know what I mean? Right. And so it's intimidating, right? What we don't know is intimidating. We all have to pay taxes. Every single one of us has some version of filing taxes. Maybe I should say that instead of paying taxes. And so we won't get political on this call. And so I'm just teasing guys. But what's cool about it to me, and what I really learned from our firm, from our leaders, is the real impact that you can have on humans' lives through taxes. And so it's everything from our people in the office all the way to the clients, to their families of both internal and external, to generations that aren't even born today. And so if you want to talk about your legacy and what that means to you, how you can impact other individuals' lives, that's what's really important to me in my legacy. I don't need my plaque on a wall. I just want to feel appreciated for the hard work and the good dollars that we save our clients, right? And so we're really fortunate that we work with entrepreneurs of all shapes and sizes, and some of them are local that, you know, it might be your grandma and grandpa, and you're meeting with them to go over their box of farm documents that smells like they smoked a whole pack of cigarettes in it, all the way to these, you know, mega large corporations that, you know, are making several $100 million of sales. And you just talk about the impact you can have on individuals in each of those scenarios and everything in between. You can't tell me that tax isn't a factor in that, or isn't the factor in that. So.
Well, you know, Caleb, I think we can already start to hear the passion in your voice and the way you describe these things. And we also kind of joked about, you know, the purpose of this podcast is not a CCK sales job, but it's just to describe what we do and why it's different in the profession. I don't know, when you made your decision to come to CCK, were you trying to decide between other things, or what exactly was it that attracted you to CCK at that time? How many years ago was it that you joined us?
2013, August 19th, 2013.
2013. So 13, 14 years. What was it that you saw in the firm, the culture at that time, that obviously has developed even to a greater extent since then? A lot of it with your leadership, but what was it that you saw at the time that set it apart?
Sure. Another great question. When I had finished my third year of college, I did 5 years and 4. I went to 2 different colleges at the same time. And so when I finished my third year, I moved to Tulsa, and I convinced the credit union that I was working at. I was a teller in Caldwell, Oklahoma. I convinced them to create their first ever accounting internship position. So I remember driving to Tulsa, and I met with HR and all this, and I helped them develop this position. I might still be the only one to have ever served that position, by the way. But it was interesting. You know, I started working there, and what I realized was that this was the same thing every single day. So it was traditional banking accounting, where you're reconciling accounts for all the branches, all the individuals, troubleshooting errors, checks, your AR, your AP, most of the general accounting functions as you might think on TV. And I realized, man, while I love the people and I love the organization I was serving, it just got old really, really quick. So one of my favorite things about being a CPA, about being in public accounting, is the variety. I love to bounce around. I definitely have some form of just hopping around until I find something that interests me enough, and then I'll dive in until I conquer it, and then I'll hop again. You really have that opportunity in public accounting. It's funny, growing up at the firm here, I remember we used to have this manager who begged me to be on the research team. And so I joined it. I had one project with her, and then she and I both realized how it was not a fit for me. My hatred and probably the terrible job I put out for it, we just decided, cool, I'll conquer some other things, not that.
Yes.
But the whole reason for bringing that up, though, in my mind, is I was never afraid to try something new on. And that's what I love about public accounting. There's so many opportunities to find that passion. It won't be the first one you try, most likely, but there's all kinds of opportunity for it.
So talk just a little bit, Caleb, about how your expertise developed over the last 13 years or so. What did you kind of start doing? Where did you catch fire and feel like this is really a fit for you? Because, I mean, the truth of the matter is, if people can't hear the passion in your voice already, they may not be really listening, because
Sure.
you are a people person. You really connect well with your clients. How long were you really working or practicing before you really caught that fire, realized you really had that gift? Maybe you had it from day one, but how did your expertise develop over the last several years?
Sure. I would say the way it really started was I'm a natural workaholic. And so when you're a workaholic, it's easier to take on more and more opportunities. And so in just being around, I wasn't shy. I would ask everyone and their mother questions. You know,
Yes.
if I thought they could help me think about it differently or solve a problem. And so I really just stayed diligent in my early years. I remember speaking of podcasts. I remember listening to a podcast years ago, which talked about the effort you put in your 20s and how that sets you up for your 30s and 40s and so on. And I just took that so seriously. Okay, if I can create a foundation here that's successful for me, then how much better off am I as I really start to develop my life, even outside my profession? So I would say asking questions. I've worked with a handful of our partners very closely, gosh, for the better part of a decade now. I was thinking about this. One of our founding partners, it was probably 2015 or 2016. I couldn't remember if it was the summer we moved into the new building or after. Regardless, I remember getting randomly called to a conference room, and it was one of our founders and then probably 3 other partners and then Cindy, the care coordinator. And I remember sitting around this table and just, I walked into the office thinking, whoa, God, like, am I getting fired? Like, what's going on? Am I getting fired here? You know, like, I start going through all of these. It's like passing a cop on the highway, right? Even if you're innocent, you start thinking about what could I have done wrong, you know? And so I remember thinking about that, and they sat me down and long story short, asked me if I wanted to just partner up with one of the partners who was working himself to death and really just needed help from somebody who wasn't afraid to get into the thick of it. They wanted to make sure I felt cared for and felt like I wasn't pressured into it, which I absolutely love that about our culture, that we want to provide opportunities. We want to stretch you. We want to push you out of your comfort zone, but we also want you to feel supported and like you have a voice in the matter. That's the kind of stuff that you don't get taught growing up, right? That you just learn kind of on the job. And so I feel very fortunate that this partner was interested in working with me and me with him. And it was I'd say very beneficial to us both, from taking care of clients, from bringing in new business, from my learning. I'm the kind of, I learn with getting my hands on it. And so I sit in these meetings with a variety of individuals, and I just try to pick up what works for them. Right? It doesn't mean it's going to work for me, but I pay close attention. You might see me taking notes. I might not even be taking notes about the client. I'm trying to take notes about the interaction of the individuals I see in the room and what I think fits in with me. So it's a long-winded answer. Hopefully that made a little sense there.
Beautiful.
No, but it was great, because it made me think of, and I know maybe we may be going down a rabbit hole here by asking this question, but it made me think of you starting your career your accounting career at CCK, and you've stayed. And when most people in this profession jump ship after 2 or 3 years, they're like, hey, I want to look for something bigger and better. I know a part of your answer is going to be just because of who we are at CCK, but what made you want to stay?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The simplest way to say it is it's because of who we are. And what that really means is I'm someone that I don't like someone else to put a ceiling on it. I just told you I don't like to be told what I can do. I certainly don't like to be told what I can't do. And so it was motivating for me that the firm checked with me often to make sure I wasn't burning myself out, but never put that barrier in front of me. If I said I want to do something, I felt so supportive of, go do it, right? Prove that it works. And that was always exciting to me. I want to create my own way. I feel very prideful about how I've gotten here. And that's just because I work really, really hard. And it's nice to feel appreciated when you're working really, really hard. That's kind of a little bit about the culture, but I also don't want to lose sight of the opportunity of it too, right? When I know we're going to get into the athlete side of this here soon, and maybe this is an okay time to transition, but that was when I started doing my own homework years before I ever worked on my first professional athlete return. And that was because I remember talking to one of our partners and telling them that I want to be partner. I want to develop my own book of business. I don't know how to do that. I don't even really know what that means at this age. And then I want to work with athletes. And I remember him over and over just being supportive of that. He didn't get into the weeds. He's got his own stuff. He's trying to learn all that, right? But it felt like, hey, you're not wasting your effort. And then a few years later, right, a couple of our partners start working with professional athletes in different sports. And I quickly jumped on. I'm like, look, guys, I need to be the one on this. Okay. I don't know what you got going on, but like, I need to be on this. And it's, again, going back to kind of your question a little bit. What I loved about that is because of how I show up for the firm, it felt so good that the firm was willing to say, yes, Caleb, we'll get back to you too. And we'll help you with these initial opportunities.
Caleb, before we go much deeper into that area that you're practicing, I do want to touch on one last thing about culture, because like I said before, I think you play a significant role in the CCK culture and where it has developed over the last several years. But one of the things that impresses me about you is what I call an intense desire to take care of people. And we had a conversation a little over a year ago, and you talked about the size of the family and the things we do to put food on the table and take care of these families. And would you just take a few minutes to kind of talk about what that means to you? Because it's a little bit different than just bringing people in so they can do your work. It's way more personal than that. So can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's funny. I think just a smidge more context of that conversation. I want to say we were talking about just growth in general, and in my words, I always say, conquering the world. So in our own version of the world. And so I remember we were having this conversation, and as any business owner that's listening can appreciate if you have employees, is there's always this balance of how do you really perform at your highest as a business, and how do you also take best care of the individuals who help you perform at your highest? To me, there's no one right answer in it, but you can't have one without the other either. And maybe that's just my opinion. There are probably a whole lot of successful businesses that are led by jerks, but I'd much rather enjoy the people I'm doing business with, and I'd much rather them enjoy it as well. And in our position as leaders, really, we have a real ability to impact the culture, and that doesn't, to your point, Jeff, that doesn't just stop with those individuals who physically work in our office or virtually for our firm. That goes to their family. It was eye-opening early on at CCK, just seeing how often we brought our families together, because those are the behind the scenes that allow us all to work like dogs when we get into our mode, right? They're the ones who have to deal with our misplaced frustration when it's been a long day, and being able to help them feel good about their spouses or their mom or dad or whoever it is that's working and providing for them, for the family to feel good about that. And see, to your point, see the food on the table, the house over their head. I grew up in a real poor situation. I'll just leave it at that. And I certainly, you don't always feel like you've got someone looking out for you in those situations, but what we have the ability to do is we are looking out for them, whether they know it or not. I guarantee you they feel it. And so to me, that's just really important to who we are as humans, much less as business owners.
Yeah. Well, we could stop right there and end this episode talking about culture and taking care of people. But there's so much more to cover, Caleb. Just it goes to speak to who you are as an individual and a professional. But let's get a little bit more into this niche that you've created. You talked about how you had this desire. Then we started to get a couple clients, and you basically took the bull by the horns and said, "Hey, let me run with this." As this was developing, not everybody does this kind of work, and it's a weird niche. So what are the challenges that you had to breaking into this niche, and how did you overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, it's interesting. The breaking into the market is a little bit of luck. And I think that's similar to most industries. It takes a little bit of luck finding the right connection, finding the right individual who, from a customer or client side, who can help you spread the good word the right way. I feel very fortunate when I forced myself as a manager onto one of these client accounts. I remember I delivered his return. I hadn't even met him. I delivered his return in our Frisco, Texas office, and the partner on the account wasn't even in that day. So I was all alone with this guy. And just real quick aside, I remember walking out the front door, and he's standing there. He's about 1.5 feet taller than me, and I go to shake his hand, and it just swallowed me. And I'm just like, man, this is real life, guys. This is like a real life professional athlete. And it was kind of cool. It was one of the first experiences as an adult I'd had with a professional athlete. So in a intentional way. So I thought that was really cool. But I remember meeting with this client, and I sat down and I just told him, I said, look, here's the stuff you need to care about. There's so much more behind this that I'll give you bits and pieces that I think you want to know. And as much as I can teach you, I want to, but I also don't want to wear you down. And so the reason I tell that story is because he's a learner, this specific client. And so he loved me showing him what he needed and a little more. And it was almost like it was the next day he started sending me referrals to guys in his locker room because he just felt that commitment to excellence that we have, the technical ability that we have, and then the care, the over exertion of care that we just try to provide every single person we cross paths with. And so I was a little bit fortunate in that way that he started pressing his clients that way. I'm sorry, his teammates that way. And then not too long after that, connected me with a couple of financial advisors that he had worked with that also operate in this space. And it just kind of took off. I mean, if you guys know me, I'm maybe a little bit awkward on the call here, but in a one-on-one situation, that's probably where I shine.
Yeah.
And that's where I can really sit down and give you my undivided attention, show you the care and heart that I have. But then also my little problem solver brain, I'm looking for problems for me to solve. Whether you even know you have problems, I'm coming up with some. So
Are you
they just kind of all fit together. Sorry.
Are you Vanilla Ice?
maybe a little bit.
He's vanilla restorative.
we shouldn't start singing on this call. We'll have to cut that out.
So Caleb, we're this niche that we're talking about. We can refer to it as athletes and entertainers or high profile clients. What kind of issues do they run into? I mean, your quote unquote normal person maybe gets a W-2 and they have some investments and they have a house and all this kind of stuff, just employees. And some of these people are employees of a team or something like that. But what are some of the common things that they encounter that some of us normal taxpayers may not encounter? What's the issues?
I appreciate the context too. I mean, just because we may have a variety of listeners, and you're right, the most common filer is more of a W-2, maybe some itemized deductions. We won't get all the way into that today because it's not the purpose, but it's somewhat standard and common. Many of our clients own businesses, right, and they have a multitude of LLCs, and those come with their own slew of issues that most business owners have. Again, I won't dig too much into that today just because I want to make it specific of our topic. The athletes and entertainers, they have a mix of all of it in some form or fashion. So many of them, depending on if they're a team sport or part of an organization that, maybe pays out W-2s, they're for sure receiving large W-2 income. So let's use the NFL, for example. Professional football players, they will receive a W-2 for their contracts. So the big, large dollar contracts you guys see them making, they're going to receive a W-2 for that. Kind of cool seeing, tens and 20s of millions of dollars come through a W-2. Pretty wild. So all of that in the organization typically, so the team typically handles most of the state income tax withholding and payroll filings that are associated with that. I will tell you, don't always trust it. I'd say around 99% of the time of my experience so far, it's been right. But a certain team, I won't call them out, in the Northeast, they screwed it up on a client a couple of years ago. And we actually were able to go work with the team to help correct that. A little aside there, but mostly the reason why I wanted to kind of put that all in a bucket is the W-2, there's only so much you can do with it on its own. Under current tax law, it's 2025 right now. Under current tax law, there's only so much you can do with it. But these highly compensated individuals, almost all of them are receiving some form of non-employee compensation. And what I mean by that is whether they're in a video game. So many people know the Madden video games. I'll just kind of try to keep it to mostly one sport right now. The Madden NFL games, every single player whose name and likeness is used inside that game, they receive a check for it.
Yep.
And so it's not always year one, because if they're a rookie, it might be a year later and so on. But every single player who's on a team, they're likely received a check for it. In addition to that, they may have other endorsement deals. So funny random story, I can share this because he's not a client of mine, but I was having dinner and drinks with the quarterback of the Cowboys, a little over a year ago now. And he literally had just gotten back from shooting about 4 or 5 different commercials. And it's funny, he showed us a little clip of one. I don't know, surely that's okay to say. He showed us a little clip of one, and it was so cool because then it was like 4 months later, I saw that same clip on TV, on a commercial break. And so it's just, if you think about all of these little places that these individuals show up, almost always they're receiving some form of compensation for that. And CPAs get that wrong all the time on how that should be taxed.
Right.
I want to just take a breath, and I'm spewing a lot. Make sure we're cool here.
Yeah,
no.
You're good, Caleb.
Okay.
So the other question, because we've used the term team a lot as well, and what kind of team do you like to build to take care of your clients? I know a lot of times there's a banker involved, there's a insurance guy involved, there's an investment advisor involved. Is that the same thing in this area, or is it a little bit different? Because you probably have, what role does the agent play in this whole thing?
Sure, it's a good question, and I would say to some degree it depends on the level of the athlete, right? If you've got someone who's, no disrespect, these are still the top athletes in the world, so absolutely no disrespect. But if you're undrafted, or you're, one of the last drafted individuals, you likely are making less than $1 million. Almost all of them are making less than $1 million at that stage. And most of them have an agent or business advisor, however you want to frame it. They like to call themselves whatever they can to help them. But most of them, they don't have a very engaged individual. That individual is only working on their contracts, maybe trying to help them get some endorsement deals outside of their team sport. And so I don't tend to get very involved with the agent themselves until I get to the higher profile individuals. From a team overall, absolutely. At the end of the day, what these individuals need and really want is they want someone that's looking out for them. They want somebody that they can trust, that they can call. With this NIL world that we have these days, moms and dads are even more involved than they ever were. And so I end up I had a call last week with a dad and his son. And the dad was doing almost the whole interviewing with me, and the son's just trying to understand, what he needs to care about. So I just think that it's complicated, and it's getting more complicated, but at a minimum, they need to work with someone who's looking out for them from an overall business standpoint. Because of who we are, we're able to do that in many ways.
Well, and I would imagine, we hear all the time that individuals of this nature are very private individuals. So how do you build that trust? I know it's probably not significantly different than we do with other clients, but there's got to be another level to it. And I would imagine that at the end of the day, these people put on their pants one leg at a time. People are people. So how do you build that trust? Does it usually take a little bit longer, or does it just kind of naturally happen? Or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I would say that it's always helpful when you're referred by a center of influence or another client. That creates a lot of initial credibility, especially in a delicate topic of anything. Financial is always a delicate topic. And so what I've seen be most successful with these individuals is I treat them like individuals. I talk to them like they're sophisticated business owners or on their path to learning about how to be sophisticated business owners. I try to meet them where they're at and coach them through it. I think that that's what's been successful about my relationship building period, but also specific to the athletes and entertainers.
Well, and there's also there's not just the time that they're playing too. You're also creating a relationship of longevity because they're going to be making their own investments after their time in the whatever sport they're playing or entertainment is, right?
I love that. And I got something I'm saving for here in a little bit. So that's beautiful, Sarah. It's beautiful.
Okay, good.
You're spot on. You're spot on, though.
And I was just going to say, it kind of goes, I would imagine that they could spot an imposter from a mile away. And that just kind of speaks to who you are as an individual, Caleb. You're just, what you see is what you get. And a lot of times that naturally blends with somebody just because you're a fun person and you're passionate. And so I could see how they would see that. You brought up NIL a few minutes ago. Can you talk just a little bit about how, because it's really, we've had a previous episode where we did talk about NIL in the sports or in the college world. What's your take on that? And how has it impacted this niche you're working in?
Sure. Great. It's funny. I went back and prepping for this. I went back to see the exact date timestamp of when I first started doing my homework on sports tax. I'll just call it 2 days ago would have made 9 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
So this is perfect timing here for the episode, but 9 years ago, I was driving and it was probably 4:15, 4:30 in the morning. And I was listening to the sports radio because that's all I listened to back then. And I remember they first started talking about this NIL. So name, image, likeness. They didn't call it NIL back then, but that's ultimately what it became known as. But they were just talking about college athletes getting paid. And I just thought, man, there's already such a large community of underserved professional athletes being taken advantage of. I can't imagine what others in the sector are going to do with these college kids. So I just felt like when the time was here, I wanted to be ready for that. I wanted to be opportunistic. I wanted to have a process down. I wanted to know what their needs were. And I wanted to be able to speak intelligently to it. And so I put in this is when the genesis of all this, I put in all this work. I still have all my spreadsheets and documents about it. And what I guess where I'm trying to go with some of that, Jeff, is I knew it was a foregone conclusion. I don't have a strong enough opinion of whether the athlete should be paid X or Y. But what I will say is that there's a whole lot of people making a whole bunch of money off of their NIL that it seems disingenuous that they couldn't profit from it as well. It needs to be done right, and there needs to be a system, but that just feels fair to me that the individual ought to be able to enjoy that too. And if you take it a step further, I mean, some of these guys and gals, they will never make it at the next level. And so them putting in all this work throughout their college time and not seeing anything for it, that's rough. So I'm a fan of it to some degree, probably don't feel strongly about it. But then when you get down to where we get involved, right, is, I was talking about the professionals, how a lot of them have this W-2 and then they've got, this endorsement income. Well, the endorsement income is the same thing as NIL, name, image, likeness. It's paying for a brand. That means going back to how I was talking a little bit about the taxation, that means these individuals in college who are even less educated on this topic and have even less resources to help them with this. Now they have to pay tax at some of the highest rates out there.
Right.
We're talking full income tax and self-employment tax on most of this income. That is a terrible answer, especially if they've never thought of how do I come up with deductions to offset that. That's really where we get to get involved and we get to help understand what the reality of this income, how it should be taxed, and really what net income should be.
Right.
Well, Caleb, I don't know where you want to share your special story, but we've got one last question for you.
Perfect.
So if you want to bring it in anytime you want to, feel free to. But it's kind of two-parter. What's the most rewarding part of this area that you're experiencing? And if I was a young professional, maybe an older professional, I don't know, if I was a professional and had a desire to get involved in this area, what kind of advice would you give me?
Great question. I'll kind of get to my story here too, because I think that that's part of my answer as well. So I'll start with the advice first. I mean, the advice I'd share with any individual, and whether that's working with athletes or not, is just be curious. That's some of my favorite advice that I've ever gotten in a professional sense, is be curious. And the more that you can ask questions and learn and listen, the more opportunities there are for you to find what you are passionate about. For me, I was relentless about figuring out what I wanted to do. And so I just kept at it. I kept trying it. I kept being curious. I kept trying. I tried energy. I tried real estate, manufacturing, and I love all of those too, but it's a totally different passion, right? My passion for that's less of the industry and more the people I'm working with. My passion here is both. It's the people and it's the industry. So kind of going to, some of the most rewarding part, or really what I'm most interested in sharing, is just kind of the development of where we're going with some of this. You asked a good question about team, Jeff, earlier. One of the things that we've been working on in our firm, and not alone in our firm, but just in our firm and with some clients, some advisors, you name it, is how do we develop, I'll call it a full service offering for athletes of all shapes and sizes. So down to the NIL kiddos that, aren't making enough money to pay for full service, but frankly need some version of that, up to the 30, 40, $50 million a year quarterbacks of these professional teams and so on. And so we've still got a little work to do, but just be on the lookout for that coming down the pike here from CCK. So that was my sales pitch there.
That was your sales pitch.
Everything else, no sales there.
Well,
very smooth, Caleb. Very smooth.
Yes. Okay, but you didn't answer my question.
What's that?
When we talking about after their entertainment and after their professional career is over, there's still more to come. There's still more for them to do, which means more stuff that we can do. So what does that look like for them?
You're spot on. I appreciate that. I probably didn't finish my thought there. With some of what we're developing, we're already doing a lot of this in a one-on-one situation, right? But we're trying to, how do we create it more systematized? These individuals, especially the more successful they are, they're going to have a variety of business interests. They're going to need estate planning, depending on what the laws are, maybe more or less estate planning. And so to your point, we sometimes we work with these clients in a more traditional sense of a family office, and how a family office might try to take care of their needs, help them manage their cash flow, sometimes pay bills when it makes sense, and so on. But really what we're talking about developing is that full life cycle from the beginning of athlete all the way through death, to just be totally frank about it.
Yeah.
And then what does that mean for, again, setting up for the future generations of, their kiddos, their whoever survives them, etc. It's how do we make sure that they're prepared for that, not taken advantage of for that. There are a lot of bad actors out there in some of these spaces, especially when it comes to professional athletes. And so how do we help give them an unbiased feedback on some of these different options? Just to be real clear on that, what that might look like would be insurance policies. I see a lot of insurance policies and a lot of NIL contracts out there that have really terrible language in it. The individual, the athlete, they may not even realize that's what they're signing up for. So,
well, in the episode we had previously where we were talking about NIL, the issue that came up is that, especially with these younger individuals, I'll call it the agent may not necessarily have the best interest in mind, and they're moving these kids for not life-changing money, but because there's additional commission in it for them. So yeah, you come through, Caleb, as someone that does care, someone that's got someone's best interest at heart and really wants to take care of someone. So before I let Sara take over here to start closing us out, I do have one question. Can you tell us your top 3 high-profile clients by name?
I'm going to fix you right there, Jeff.
Yeah,
Where you
probably
live.
not.
Sarah, you had something to ask Caleb?
Exactly.
All right, Sara.
Like, Jeff Rabel was going to be my number 1.
Oh, okay.
That's all I can share today. Okay.
Oh, you have my
That's all you-
approval to share my name.
Yes.
All right, Sara Mays, it's time for you to take over. with
All
our
right,
special segment.
Yes, it's time for rapid fire. Yes, so we got some questions for you. All right, you ready? All right. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Astronaut.
Nice. Okay.
Or quarterback of the Cowboys, but I just never really believed that one.
So we'll go with astronaut. All right. Your favorite sport to watch?
Football by far. Go Cowboys.
And if you could have any dream athlete as a client, who would you pick?
Of all time or?
Of all time, dead or alive?
Ooh, that's actually really good. I would probably say Michael Irvin. He's one of my favorite, and he's just got such a personality. I could not imagine sitting down, going over his tax return with him and his giant hands. I've met him, he's giant hands. And he would probably cover the page, and I'd have to like move him out of the way. He'd probably come with some quip at me about, how goofy I look. But
Right.
I don't know. He would be fun. He would be a lot of fun.
Well,
That's
Caleb,
awesome.
maybe I don't want to spoil it, but I'm sure Michael Irvin listens to this podcast. So you just put out another sales pitch there. And
Right.
I mean, if you listen to our previous podcast episode, Harry Styles listens to our podcast. So you want to put a pitch out for him as well. And I will make this comment. We purposely did not highlight your football allegiance until the end because we wanted to make sure people listen to you. We know that you suffer. You suffer.
I also kept that close to the vest as long as I could.
Right. You did good. You did good.
But seriously, though, one fun fact is that Caleb's office looks across the street at the Cowboys practice facility. So he's definitely in the right spot. If anybody in the Cowboys is listening and they want someone to care for them. But
He's
Caleb,
right there, hop, skip, and jump.
you are an amazing person. You're an amazing professional. What am I doing?
I have 2 questions.
You have more? I thought you said last
Yes.
question.
No, I only
Go
did
ahead.
3.
My bad. My bad.
I've got like 2 of the best ones left.
Okay.
All right. Yes. Frable, jumping the gun. All right. What is the Super Bowl of all accounting deadlines?
Ooh, September 15th for 2 reasons. One is it is the business extended deadline, so business tax return deadline when they've been extended. And the number 2 reason, which is probably the most important reason, is my birthday is September 16th. And so I literally was born to do this, guys. So
Yes, that's
the
right.
Super Bowl, we celebrate the whole firm across the whole world. People are celebrating my birthday. So pretty cool.
Yes. All right. Last question. And then Frable, you can close us out. All right. Last question. You're walking into a new client meeting. You have all the sound systems in the world playing. What would your walk-up song be?
Ooh. Popping My Collar by 3 6 Mafia.
Nice. Duly noted. All right. Next break meeting.
That's the other thing about Caleb. He's not this traditional music guy. He's what do they call it? Electronic what?
EDM, yeah, electronic dance music.
EDM. He even likes cool music. So
Yeah.
Is it okay now, Sara?
Yes, you
Okay.
have my permission to close this out.
As I was saying before, Caleb, we appreciate you. And I'm sure that all of our listeners know now why we were so excited to have you on. But a true professional. If you are listening to this episode and you would love to connect with Caleb, we cannot recommend him highly enough as a professional, as someone who cares. But if this guy just sounds cool and you want to connect with him, or email us at podcast@cckcpa CPA.com. If you want to let us know how awesome Sarah's rapid fire questions are, email us at podcast@cckcpa.com. And if you would like to, share a comment that says, get Jeff off there and we want more Sarah, podcast@cckcpa.com. We are so thankful that you are listening to us today. Special thanks goes out to CCK Strategies for being our sponsor. We appreciate the opportunity to have this platform as well as venture out into new areas of practice. Christy, thank you so much. You weren't very vocal today, but you always keep us on the straight and narrow. Thank you for that. Robert Mays for your music on the intro, the outro. Clarence Fisher with Tulsa Internet Marketing Services for helping us put this whole thing together. And then to our special admin assistants, Natalie and Emily, thank you for helping us get the ball across the goal line to use it in a fun way with our topic today.
Way to put that metaphor in there.
Yeah, that metaphor. So thank you for all you do. So thank you again for joining us today, and join us next time when these two CPAs get together to have a chat and you get to find out who's on the mic.
The information provided on this podcast is for general informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute accounting, tax, legal, or financial advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, laws and regulations change and individual circumstances vary. Always consult with a qualified CPA or professional advisor before making any financial or business decisions. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any organizations they are affiliated with. Listening to this podcast does not create a client-accountant relationship. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree to those terms. And that's a wrap for this episode of Two CPAs and the Mic. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Have questions or ideas for a topic? Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@cckcpa.com.